And this is 38A. And over here is going to be 38B. Alright, so what you do is Cole's going to put his phone away. Thank you. You look and see if it passes one or more of these tests. Now, our first test is if each pair of opposite sides are parallel. So what would it have to look like on our picture for them to be parallel? What would we have to have? The arrows. Good, yeah. So we have to have arrows here. Now it says if each pair. So do we only have one or do both have to be parallel? Okay. So that's what it would have to look like for the first test. Or if both pairs of opposite sides are congruent. So what would that have to look like? The tickies. One tickie, and then what would the other side have to have? Two tickies. Alright, number 3 says, if both pairs of opposite angles are congruent. So what would we have to have for opposite angles to be congruent? Little rainbows, good. Do they both have to have rainbows? Yes. Alright, so the first test is if each pair of opposite sides are parallel, or if both pairs of opposite sides are congruent, or if both pairs of opposite angles are congruent, or if the diagonals bisect each other. So what would it look like if the diagonals bisect each other? So we would go from where? Okay? Now, is that all it has to look like? You need the tickies. Good. Take a point. We need the tickies because we have to know that they bisect each other. So what would our tickies look like? We would have one ticky here and one ticky here. That means that the parts of your diagonal are bisecting. And then you have to have two. Now remember, it says if the diagonals, plural, not just if one diagonal bisects it. In the final test, if one pair of opposite sides are both parallel and congruent. So if this was parallel here, and they were congruent. So if they're parallel and congruent. So if a quadrilateral passes one or more of these tests, then the quadrilateral is a parallelogram. You ready to practice? I'm going to put some... Where did all my sticky notes go? Yes. Yes. Because that's saying that these... Let's not keep you around. That's saying that these are congruent. Yeah.
Why did you choose 5? It don't matter. Just asking.
Is this a parallelogram? No, that's not what I asked you. I asked you if it is a parallelogram. Are opposite angles congruent? Yes, opposite angles are congruent. So it passed test which one? Test number 3. Alright, so that's parallelogram.
So does that matter if it's a double rainbow?
Correct. Alright, what about this one?
Yes.
Why?
Because the opposite angles are congruent.
How do you know that?
Because opposites.
Because they added to be 180. So if these are consecutive, so if this is 105, what does that have to be? So that means that opposite angles are congruent. Can somebody let Aaron in?
Also, sides.
We don't have anything about sides here. Alright, what about this one?
Yes.
Why? What test does that pass?
The bisection.
Bisection of diagonals, number 4. Awesome. Alright, what about this one? No? Why?
It doesn't have the tikis on the other one.
It doesn't have the tikis on the other diagonals, and it doesn't have the arrows. We know that opposite sides are congruent, and we know that this is congruent, but we don't know anything about this other diagonal, and we don't know anything about the sides or if they're parallel.
Yes.
No. Because it doesn't have the parallel.
It doesn't have the parallel, and we don't know anything about these top sides, right? All right, what about this one? Why?
It has the arrows and the congruent.
Good. What about this one? Why?
Because both pairs of opposite sides are congruent.
Fantastic. And what about this one? Do they? Well, this is 5.1 and this is 4.9. Bisect means it cuts it in half, right? So are these congruent? No. So that's not it. All right, now let's look at our examples. We can practice these on our, this is going to be your homework for this weekend, 1 through 6, but let's look at number 7. It says, determine if the following coordinate points will form a parallelogram. What would you have to do to know that they are a parallelogram? Graph it, all right? So let's go to 38C and graph it.
Yes, sir. With my handy dandy
But you're not good. Right. You're not going to, we're just going to let it go. We're going to be able to.
Alright, sorry.
Lies. Alright, so A was 2, 3. B was 8, 4. C was 7, -2. And D is 1, -3. So we're going to graph these 4 points. And then we're going to look and see what we see. Blessings. Because we like to party. What did you just say? Oh. Pardon? No bueno. So this is what mine looks like. Now, how could we tell for sure if our opposite sides are parallel? What do we know about parallel lines? No. They have the same what? They have the same slope. Take a point. So we would have to use the slope formula and find the slope of each of our lines. So we would find the slope of AD. And remember, the slope formula is y2 minus 1 divided by x2 minus x1. And we would have to do the same thing for BC, and we want to see if those are congruent. Alright, finish these for homework this weekend. Do not come in on Tuesday without your homework done. Come to 0 period, get your work done. Does everybody hear me? Alfredo, looking at you, son. Goodbye, children. Have a great weekend. Make good choices. Be good people.